What's going on, YouTube gamers? Bonfire here, and today we are playing some Nioh, the new demo out on the PlayStation 4, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts and impressions after playing a few hours of this game. The demo was only available for a short time. I think it's available until May 5th, so if you guys are interested, go out, download it, and give it a go. So for those of you that don't know, Nioh is the upcoming game from the developer Team Ninja, and these are the same developers that did the Ninja Gaiden series. And it's basically if Dark Souls and Ninja Gaiden had a baby, that's what this game is. Now, this game was first shown off at the PlayStation Experience late last year, and I was really excited about it. I thought it looked really cool. I loved the atmosphere. It looked like some pretty fast-paced combat, which I thought was really cool. And I liked the whole aspect of being a ninja and samurai, so I was really excited to get my hands on this game. So, first impressions of this game. This game is hard. Really hard. We're talking rage-inducing hard. And it might even be harder than the Dark Souls games. I know, that's saying a lot. I can't tell you guys how many times I died with playing the first couple of enemies over and over again, because this game has a steep learning curve, and its combat has enough elements different from Dark Souls that there's a lot to learn here. The biggest thing about the combat is that it just doesn't feel as polished and consistent as Dark Souls games do. The thing with Dark Souls combat and the gameplay in those games is that if you die, it's your fault. And the combat's designed as such, so if you get overwhelmed, maybe you get a little greedy during that boss battle, or you don't time your attacks or your dodges right, it's your fault. However, in this game, that doesn't always feel like the case. There are times when I'll put on a couple attacks or do a combo, because there are combos in this game, which is a pretty cool addition to the combat system, but then as the enemy tries to attack me, I'll try to dodge out of the way, and either I don't have enough stamina, but even though I haven't run out, that I can't dodge, or the game just kind of freezes, or my character just locks up, and I end up getting just destroyed. And that happens all too often. It just doesn't feel like it's as balanced as a combat system as that is in Dark Souls. There are a couple of neat things in the combat that I really like. The first is with your stamina bar, just like in Dark Souls, it's going to go down as you attack or you dodge. But when it runs out, your character will literally freeze and have to catch his breath. Enemies do this too, which is a great opportunity to go in, get a couple attacks, but when that happens to you, it adds this new element of strategy. It can be frustrating at times, as sometimes you don't feel like you totally ran out of stamina and you kind of get stuck there, which could lead to deaths, but it definitely makes you more aware of how much stamina you're using and how you're timing your attacks. The other thing is this stance system. So you can do 3 different stances within the game. You can do a high stance, a mid stance, and a low stance. And the low stance is basically very quick, light attacks. The mid stance is kind of your normal attacks. And the high stance is heavier, slower attacks. And you can use these stances in different ways as you approach the combat situations to take down different enemies. It gives you different strategies, different techniques to use. And I really like that because I found it useful using the different stances and different combats as I took on various different enemies within the game. My biggest problem with the combat is probably the lack of healing. Because you get elixirs, those are like your Estus flasks, if you will, like in Dark Souls, that heal you up, but even as a lower level character, these elixirs don't heal you all the way. And you don't get very many of them, they're few and far between. You do occasionally get more than your base stock that gets refreshed. But it just feels like the whole thing about the combat, since you can't heal, and it's a very steep learning curve, is like you can't get hit in this game. If you do, you're gonna die. Outside of the combat, the core game's systems and all the other mechanics are going to be very similar to Dark Souls. So if you're a Dark Souls player, you've played one of the Soul games, you're going to pick up some of these other systems and mechanics very easily because they're very similar. You pray at these shrines, those are just like the bonfires, and you can level up your character there. You can also trade in some items for experience, which is kind of cool because you get a lot of items in this game. There's a lot of item drops, which I think is very interesting. And you can also do some upgrades to your character outside of leveling up, which is pretty cool. So all of those things feel very similar. And each time you pray at these shrines, the enemies regenerate. One of the things that's interesting that is a little different than Dark Souls is that you get experience, and when you die, you have to go back, and I don't even know what it's called, but it's like a bloodstain. We got to go back and get your experience. But if you die on the way to go get your experience where you'd previously died, you lose the experience you gained on your way there and the experience that you had. So it's like a refresh. So it's even more punishingly difficult when you die. Now, I had mentioned you can trade in weapons, and you'll want to do this frequently because there are a lot of items that get dropped by enemies. And one of the interesting things about that is the items have a rarity level, similar to what you'd see in Destiny or The Division with all the loot that gets dropped. My only annoyance around this is that you're going to trade in weapons, you do this often, and after a while it became tedious because you have to do it one by one. So I'm hoping in the final game you can select multiple items that you want to trade in all at once, just to kind of simplify that process. One of the last things that I think is notable here is that this game, when you start out, it feels like an open world, like you would see in a Dark Souls type game. However, once you get past the first boss, you realize that this game is broken down into levels. And so I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out in its final form. Is this game strictly just level by level with a boss at the end? Or is it going to have a more open world feel or a combination of both? I'm not really sure, but I think that's worth noting, and I found it pretty interesting. And I'm also curious because they have this item rarity, and you get rare drops after a boss battle, that is there going to be some sort of loot system to where you're going to want to grind and play levels over and over again, not only to level up your character, but also get better weapons. I honestly hope that's not the case because I'm not a big fan of those types of games, but I could see it going that way. Now, overall, Nioh has some really fun moments to be had, and when you kind of start to understand the combat and really get the flow of things, it can be really fun and really satisfying, but then there are other moments just where the game feels a little unfair, and it can be really, really frustrating. I also feel like this could be a game where it's going to force you to grind and level up due to its steep learning curve. This is a game that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out on, but it's a game that I thought I would like more than I actually do. So there you guys have it. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. I did take down a boss. I'm really excited. You do get a reward if you take down the bosses too when the final game comes out, so grind for it. Let me know what you guys think about this game and some of my thoughts down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.
Yeah, now come up, it's 80 you now. If you whip it, put your hands up. On the fly, lady, set a front, go ahead and stand up.